class, we will start with Access, creating a database. So this video will cover session 1.1 for Module 1 in your Access textbook. And you can look at the objectives on AC1 in your textbook. Basically, we'll go over the basic database concepts and terms, the start and exit of Access. We'll be exploring Access windows in the Backstage view. We'll create a blank database. We'll create and save a table in Datasheet view. We'll enter field names and records in the table datasheet, and we'll open a table using the navigation pane. For this module, on page 1, basically you need to review the case for the Riverview Veterinary Care Center. Through module 1, basically it kind of goes through and gives you step-by-step on creating the database, how you're going to add fields to each of the tables, and go through creating forms, reports, queries, and things of that nature. So just read that, and then we'll kind of follow through the textbook. I will not read it word for word, so just kind of make sure you go through, understand all the key concepts and terms. Some of the more important ones would be on page 4 for field, which is a single characteristic or attribute of a person, place, object, or event. Table, which is a collection of fields that describes a person, place, object, or event, or an idea. And then in figure 1.1, basically it shows you for each of the fields what those specific values are. So we're looking at an animal table, which would have an animal ID, animal name, animal type, and animal breed. It also discusses what a database is, which is a collection of related tables. It also discusses common field, which is when you connect the records in separate tables through a common field that appears in both tables. So if you look on page 5 in figure 1-2, you can see that in the animal table and the visit table, they both contain the animal ID. In the first animal table, animal ID is the primary key. So that's kind of the, like, if you take your banner ID, that is your number that you're identified by. That information then is used in the second table, which is a visit ID, as a common field. And it's also a foreign key because the visit table already has a specific primary key, which is based on the visit ID. So every time you would go to a specific appointment, you would get a specific ID number, if that makes sense. So understanding what a primary key is important. Understanding what a foreign key means. And then on page 6, it talks about the database management system, which is a software program that lets you create databases and then manipulate the data they contain. And then it also discusses relational database management systems. Okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to select our Start menu. We're going to select Access 2016. And we're going to create our first database. Okay, so this is what is called the Backstage view. Basically, you can see any recent files that were opened or created. You have a blank database here, and then you have multiple templates that are available. You can also search online for, if you're looking for a specific type that maybe someone else has created or that is available online. So on page 9, we're going to select the blank desktop database. Here, you can basically, you're going to give it a name. By default, it always has database, and so mine currently has 2 because if you look over my recent, I already had a database 1. So it follows that pattern of if you don't give it a name, which is not a good idea, but it would always just go to the next specific, like database 2, 3, 4, and so forth. So here on step 3, on page 9, we're going to call this Riverview, and we're going to select Create. Now, one other thing here, if you are on a lab computer or someone else's machine, you may want to browse to a different location to select potentially a thumb drive or a network share, whatever you may be using. But if you're on your own personal machine, just remember by default where it saved it. So mine's currently saving it in my documents. At the bottom of page 9 and 10, that talks about the touch mode. I will not be covering that section. If you have a device that actually has that functionality, you may want to read through that to make sure. So on page 11, we're going to look at creating a database or creating a table, in database view or in datasheet view. So in the middle of the page, basically what we're being asked to do is for the Riverview Veterinary Care Center, Kimberly needs to track information about each animal visit at the center. She asks you to create a visit table according to the plan shown in figure 6.1. So basically, we're going to be creating fields for each of these, and it has a purpose. So it's important when you're creating a table to kind of know, have it defined, plan out what it is you specifically need in your table, and go from there. So making sure you truly understand what you need. All right, so we are currently in, by default, it will automatically open up the table. And this is table 1 by default. Again, kind of like database 1, 2, 3, 4, and so forth. It will automatically create that. So we're going to go through and we're going to rename our default primary key. So by default, we have ID, which is our primary key. And here you can see that it says new. So if you select that field, you can see the data type is auto number, which means it would automatically generate numbers as we created or added additional records. So we're going to change this to make it more informative. And so we're going to right-click on the field and we're going to rename field. You can see that it highlights it in black. So from here, what we want to type in is visit ID. Okay. One other thing to note, so if you're in a table, so depending on the specific type of objects, there's several different type objects within Access. We're currently in a table, so you can see here at the very top where there's a contextual tab that appears called Table Tools, and it's kind of highlighted here so you can see that fields and tables are part of that contextual tab. So if we would actually close, so let's wait on that and I'll show you that in a minute. But when you actually close it and you're out of this contextual tab will go away. But it's important to understand that anytime you're working with any kind of object, then it will have a specific contextual tab that goes along with that. So we'll see that as we kind of go through the lesson. At the bottom of page 13, we're going to change the data type for the default primary key in the formatting group. So this is what you call a ribbon. So in the contextual tab, we are in fields, and this is a field ribbon for the table tools. And here under formatting, we're going to change the data type. So you can see there's multiple options to change it to. So for the data type, it basically determines what fields can be entered for your field. And again, kind of auto number is basically where it automatically generates a number for you and it can't be predefined. So that would be kind of difficult if we were adding information in, like if you would say your banner ID number. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 would not be relevant to your specific banner ID number, so we're going to change the actual data type. Here we're going to change it to short text. And at the bottom of page 13, it shows you that short text data type allows field values containing letters, digits, and other characters, and is appropriate for identifying numbers such as visit numbers that are never used in calculations. Okay? All right, so now that we have changed our default primary key, now we're going to look at adding new fields. So at the bottom of page 14, here again on our contextual tab for fields, we have an add and delete. So from here, this group, we want to click on short text. So here, we're going to select short text button. And you can see that it added a new field here. It called it field 1, and it is currently highlighted. So from that, we can go ahead and change it on page 15 in step 2 to animal ID. All right. Next, what we're going to do from the add and delete group is we're going to add date and time. So for this one, what we want to have is visit date. And as you can see, as I'm typing in here, I do not put any spaces. So for your fuel names, they cannot have any spaces in them. Okay. So you can't do later on towards the end of the access tutorial or module 4, we will be able to go in and modify and like the display name. But as far as the actual field name, it can have no spaces. All right, next, so basically what I'm trying to show you is there's multiple ways to add different fields. So far what we've done is we've added short text, which added the animal ID. We've added visit date by selecting date and time. And what that does is it makes it specific. So this is already defined as short text. When we select the visit date, it basically tells you that the data type is date and time. So based on that, it has certain criteria that it has to meet for that. The next thing we're going to do is you can also click to add. Once you select that, you basically have the same options that are listed here under add and delete group listed here. So it's just a shortcut to do that. And we're going to select short text, and then we're going to type in reason. All right, the last one we're going to check is going to be the yes, no. And this field is going to be called off-site. So we want to know if the visit was off-site. Okay, so basically from there, we've added our 5 fields. It was really not that difficult. Again, by default, you always have a default primary key. We rename that by right-clicking on it and doing rename field. We also changed the value from auto number to a short text, and then to add additional fields, we either used the add and delete group and selected the specific type field we wanted, or we selected the drop-down box for click to add. Okay. On page 16, a data sheet view. So this is what's currently called a data sheet view. And here in your corner, it shows you on the very left the different type views. So by default, the data sheet view basically looks like an Excel spreadsheet somewhat. And then there's design view. So if you can see, the current view that you're in, and we're in data sheet view, it always gives you an option for the other type view, which is the design view. Okay, you can always select the drop-down arrow to see multiple options, but by default, whatever view you're currently in, it shows you the option for the other view by default. So this is design view. Okay, and of course this is data sheet view. What you can do is basically once you select your table selector here, you can go in, and so in between any of the specific columns, when your arrows are pointing both right and left, you can double click and it will resize your information appropriately. Okay? And as you kind of go through and start adding information, you will have to resize to make sure that you can read the contents of what you're actually entering. So now we're going to look at entering records. We're going to enter the figure 111, so the visit table records that are listed here at the bottom of page 16. And again, on page 17, it just kind of goes step by step. And some important things to note. So in step 1, for the visit ID, we're going to type in 1072. As I'm typing that, you can see that this little indicator, the pencil, means that I'm actually editing the record. Okay, so your pencil means that you're editing. Okay, you can then tab over, and then we're going to enter step 2, our animal ID, which is 12356. Tab, we're going to type in our date, which is 12/12/16. Tab, and then vaccinations. Tab, And then for here, to select that it's offsite, you would press the spacebar key to select the check mark. And if you did it by accident, you can always select it again and it would uncheck it. So for this one, it is an offsite visit, so we're going to press the spacebar and then we're going to press tab. Now, because this was the last fuel defined, when I press tab, it takes me to the next record. The star here basically indicates, the star symbol identifies the second row as the next row available for the new record. So that star indicates a new record. All right, so now we're going to enter the remaining records on page 18. One thing it suggests is this is what is called your navigation bar. So if you need additional space, you can use the shutter bar to open and close. So you can see once you close it, it tells you it's the navigation pane, but it just kind of hides it so you have more space to work. Okay, so you can minimize or maximize the screen, the navigation pane as you need. All right, so on page 19, we just need to add those additional fields. So for vaccinations, here we're going to press the space bar so we can select offsite. And we just have a few more to enter. Okay, for the injured leg and hoof, we're also going to select offsite. And then our last record is 1044. Okay, so we've entered our information. Again, you can see for reason we can't actually read that. So if you select your table selector, and you can select anywhere within the table. It doesn't have to be at reason. It can be here at animal ID. And double click, it will give you the appropriate spacing. One thing to note too is because you're manually typing this in, if there's some error, you can always double click and go in and make any changes to that. Okay. All right. So looking at saving a table. All right, the records you enter are immediately saved in a database as soon as you enter them. However, the table design, the field names, and characteristics of the fields themselves, plus any layout changes to the database are not saved until you save the table. So we haven't saved the table yet, but once we save the table, any kind of additional records that we add would automatically be saved. So the important piece here to remember is that the individual records, you never have to save those because as you enter them, they're automatically saved. When you create a new table or any kind of object or any kind of changes to that table, then that's the piece that you have to save. So we're going to save and name our visit table. So here is what we call your quick access toolbar. We're going to select save, and it brings it up, and what we're going to call this table is visit. And from here, we're going to select OK. You can see it changed my name here, and it also changed it here in the navigation pane. All right, so we're going to add additional records, and they're listed on page 21. So let's start here on page 20. So we're going to add 10, 16, I'm sorry, take that out. So it's just referring to our first field in this table. So on page 21, we're going to add 1036. We're going to tab over, and our animal ID is 12294 1129 2016. Decline. We're not checking the offset box. We're going to add 1152 12318 113 2017 and not 80. Okay. And now, so what you can see here is we've actually added 2 additional records. Now I'm going to actually close it by just selecting the X here on the right-hand side to close visit, and it did not prompt me to save. So as I had said, creating the table, adding the fields, you have to save that part. So if I would go in and add additional fields, then it would require me to save, or if I change formatting or things like that. But adding records, it will not prompt you to save because it saves that automatically. So from here, if you had closed your navigation pane, you can kind of open it up. You can see our object here listed as a table, which is visit. Now what we're going to do is, in order to open a table, we're just going to double click, and you can see that it's listed all your 10 records. Okay. One thing to note is that as you put in your information, you did not put it in order based on the primary key. Access by default will automatically arrange them in order based on whatever your primary key is listed here. Okay. All right. So this concludes 1.1. The quick check would be important to go over. That would help you with any type quizzes that you have. Those resources are also listed on Blackboard. So just make sure you kind of review those as well.